And
hold on, can you guys see okay? Because my screen is freaking out.
Shauna just said you guys are flashing black and white.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. Hold on.
Welcome to another episode of Unresolved Textual Tension. Today we are talking about the Murderbot series, 1 through 4 by Martha
Wells.
It is about an emotionally constipated cyberpunk man of, like, I know they don't have, like, genitalia, but is it, was it supposed to be, like, female, neither male figure? I never figured that out.
I don't know what the visual is, but Murderbot refers to itself as it, and other people refer to it as it.
And just to note very quickly, I am going to try to say it, but I am probably going to just forget and default to he because the voice actor in it is male. Apologies to Murderbot. But technically, yes, our main character is a Murderbot. And already I have issues.
What do you mean you have issues?
He's not really a robot.
Surprise!
And so
Will does not like this series.
What? Oh my god, dude.
No, listen, I knew 4 chapters into the first book that Will would not like this.
Why? Okay. No, give me a summary of 2 sentences.
okay, all right. Let me explain my weirdness. It's funny because the other day Maria was saying that she was putting on her Will hat to think about something, and she was like, "Oh, it's gotten very sophisticated." And I'm like, "That makes sense. I'm a sophisticated person." And she goes, "No, the model of you in my head has grown very sophisticated." Here's what happens. I have a thing where I like robots to feel like robots in the same way that I like aliens to feel like aliens and not just people with funny foreheads. And I'm pretty sure this started on the same show, which is TNG, where Data acts nothing like a robot, and it bothers me a lot. And he's always constantly trying to be more like a human for some reason. It bothers me when robots are not written to act like they're actual computers thinking about things, like intelligent AI. And so this book... So another thing is, I'll break down in a little bit more of why I had issues with it. But my main problem is that Murderbot himself does not feel like a bot or a robot. He really just feels like one of the replicants from Blade Runner. And if it had been named Blade Runner Replicant, I think I would have had less problems with the series.
It's a joke. It's not as serious as all that. It's just a joke to reference to himself. That's the whole point.
What Will wants out of
is hyper-realistic representation.
It's not even that. If you read Will's story written from the AI perspective of a bunch of robots that is talking collectively, you will understand what Will wants out of a robot story or just AI or technologically enhanced. The thing is, and my argument is that this series is more about divergent human experiences because he does have a human brain. He has organic parts on top of the AI aspects that he has with him as well. He is neither human nor is he a robot. It is a divergent human experience. That's not what Will wanted. Will wanted a more like an analysis of the technology. He wanted more examples.
That's not this book.
That's not the book, but it's still called The Murderbot Diaries. Like, it's not called The Somewhat Human Mall Cop. Like, you know what I mean? It's when you call yourself The Murderbot Diaries and you supposedly have a half robot brain, then like it doesn't deliver on that promise of how a robot would think. And I will like the argument that I think the books would be better if it did. And I think that if you're not going to do that, the least you could do is like frame it a little bit differently than it's framed in universe. Again, framing it more as like the Cylons from Battlestar Galactica, I think, or again the replicants from Blade Runner would be a more efficient way to do it because Murderbot has like constant emotions all the time that just a robot would not have. But I think it'll probably be easier to break that down as we go through the story and hit the points where that happens.
Here's how I felt about this book. I loved it. It was fantastic. It will be a comfort. Like, I already want to reread it, and I have not finished the 5th novella. I read the novel because I accidentally read them out of order. But, like, this is comfort for me. Murderbot is a sweet baby boy that must be protected at all costs, or baby girl, however you engage, but, like, needs to be protected. Art is also something that must be protected, and I love. And here's the other fundamental difference between Will's experience and my experience. I thought these books were really funny. And I laughed.
They're not supposed to be read like seriously. I pictured it as like I were watching a cartoon or an anime. That it's very lighthearted. It's not supposed to be like, it's gimmicky on purpose, and it's even called out. And
you laughed reading this. You found it humorous.
Yes.
Will didn't.
I actually didn't even realize that it was supposed to be funny at point. Like, I understand that it's lighthearted and that certain points were supposed to be kind of funny.
Because your critical brain was judging it too hard.
Not even. I just did not find... Like, Maria was talking about how she was, like, laughing out loud at parts. And I'm like, which?
Yeah,
what are
I
you
have
talking
a screen
about?
clip of it.
It was on such a different wavelength than what I was getting, that it's... My criticisms of the book are not actually... Like, I have a lot of them, but I think as a whole, the book did not benefit from being a book club book, in that normally I would have picked this up, read the first novella, gone, oh, I wish the robots could have been written better, but whatever, that's cute. And then I had to sit around for 3 more books of like just a lot of plots and fights happening.
He found Murderbot annoying.
I'm not going to say that I want him to get run over by a train, because I understand that Maria would give his life for him and she would jump in front of the train and then I would have no more Maria. But the sentiment remains. I just find him an irritating character for whatever reason. Partly, again, I feel like his motivations don't make up. Like, I just do not fundamentally understand why he has such social anxiety.
Really quick, I want to comment on, or I want to read some of the comments we're getting as we were hashing this out from our patrons. Allie said, the robots in this universe, there's robots and then there's like cyborgs, what they call constructs. And what that is, for those of you who have not read this, is a construct has cloned human parts, like an actual human brain, plus AI and robot parts. So there are parts of Murderbot's body that is flesh, and then parts that are just augments, like technology fabricated parts. And there is a difference. There's comfort units and comfort bots, and then there's sec units, which is what Murderbot is, and we'll talk more about that. Amanda said, I don't know, I feel like it was similar to the Cylons in BSG.
That's what I mentioned on mine, and it's because, again, those are like their artificial life, but they're not really robots. Like, it's very hard to tell what they are, that they're not biological. That makes a lot of sense as a reading. I just wish it had been framed that way by the text, which it isn't. Murderbot at a certain point thinks about how they have both a human brain or brain tissue and a robot and an AI portion, and how those two are integrated, but there's not actually a lot of exploration of how they're integrated or the dissonance between them, or quite what the relationship is there, that I would have really loved to see explored.
I saw it kind of more like Clone Wars clone.
For me, the thing with the clones in Star Wars, at least, and Clone Wars, is that like they are 95% human. Like, they do not have augments, and so for me, Murderbot, and that's the thing, is I was okay just exploring divergent personhood. That's like, I was okay with it. That's what it was exploring. He does not react or engage with things the way everybody else does. He doesn't identify as human, but there is an exploration of humanity and personhood within his character, and I really just didn't mind, because Will's right. There's not a lot of push and pull between the way his organic parts react to things and the way his cyborgy parts react to things, or the way his AI brain does and his like human tissue does.
I would argue that it does a little.
It does, it does a little, but it doesn't explore it. It's there, but it's not an exploration of that. What it is more concerned with is, like I said, what I'm going to refer to as the divergent humanity. And for me, that was fine. I'm okay with that. I did not need that other part.
So Amanda said, reading it though as someone who is not neurotypical made it better for me in understanding. I think that's the best way to read the book, is as a, not metaphor, but like a metaphor essentially for neuroatypical behavior. I know a lot of people on our Discord were talking about how much they really loved that as representation. And it's interesting because like, I mentioned this to Maria, but like, I'm weirdly like Murderbot in certain ways, in terms of deep social anxiety, not liking other people very much, and being also extremely judgmental of them, not to their face. And so like, I felt like I would have liked that aspect more, but I found it, again, to get in the way of like, but this isn't a story about someone who's neurally atypical. This is a robot.
But he's not a robot. Again, Will is fixated, and I cannot fix that fixation.
Because it's in the title!
You find excuses to complain about it.
Oh, that's why Will doesn't like the books.
He does see too much of himself in it.
Oh. No, I don't think that's it. I did think about that, but I don't really think that's why. I just found him to be kind of cranky.
I loved it.
The other thing is he's not that funny. Well, okay, that goes into the fact that you guys did think he was funny. So I'm just saying that if you find him funny and you find him charming, then the books are just cast differently in your head. Like I found a lot of the plot to be kind of boring. That's not if you find him funny and interesting. I found his motivations to be weird because like, why is a robot socially anxious? But if you don't, then his motivations make sense and he's more engaging. So there's a certain amount of which it's just first order principles are different.
We're seeing it from his really limited perspective of like whatever he's talking to us, so we're getting filtered of what's truly happening when, and it's leaked in between the scenes when people react to him and stuff like that, and when he's interacting with other characters. That's why it's kind of like tongue-in-cheek the whole time, and he's kind of like, it's, you're supposed to assume other part characteristics about him through the the descriptions of him interacting with other characters. Also, as a side note, this was a pretty funny moment in the like third book where it says and Mickey said, Don Abney, maybe Grey Chris removed the central cores for the resident systems and then they pulled out. They would want to cut their losses. And it's like verbatim what Murderbot said. And then he's just like, for f***'s sake. Like, that's such a cute little, like...
It is. But to be fair, Shelby said...
Hey, Shelby.
This book didn't work for me either. I didn't relate to Murderbot, and I didn't find it funny. So there really wasn't anything for me, and I was a little bored. But I'm happy for everyone else who loved it. And that's the truth. That's what I said to Will. This book has a, like... And it's similar to how when we did Mask of Mirrors... Will and I had loads of issues with that series. But Shelby and Katie were like, I see them, but now I was here for it. And I think sometimes we just have to accept that there is a level of subjectivity to engaging with books where the reason this book worked for me, and I'm going to probably say for Katie as well, if it went the route that Will wanted to go, it probably wouldn't have worked as well. It might have been a different, better book, but I don't think it would have had this core, and thus it wouldn't have been like... I think the book Will would have pulled out of this would have been a fascinating exploration, but I don't think it would be my new comfort series.
But that's like comparing, that's like the Kafka version of this versus the, like, literally the comic book. This is a comic book made essentially into a...
I forget, is The Sandman supposed to be a work of art, or is it just a comic book, as you would say?
I'm going to read from the chat. I thought it made sense that the more human you make a robot, the more mental issues they're going to have, which I agree. And I will argue a lot of Murderbot's issues and social anxieties come from never having any emotional training or upbringing to deal with any emotional stimulus or interactions with other human. His programming and protocols had nothing to do with that. But anyway, Zeta said, I loved MB's internal dialogue, but I can easily imagine how others might find him annoying, just like how others might find your good friend annoying in real life. Very true. Shelby says, the novellas continued.
And it was a planet-to-planet road trip. I would have loved more detailed new worlds. Yeah, that's another thing, is that the setting is remarkably, I don't want to say bland, but like, it's hard to picture almost any of it, and it's all the same. I will also argue that the novella format actually is bad for the books, in that I found the human cast to be really interchangeable, and the arc of it to be kind of repetitive. I was talking with Maria, and she was saying how in the fifth book, that's actually not really an issue too much, because you have that longer arc that you're able to latch onto, which... You know, I think is really just a problem with the novellas. I don't think it's like an inherent problem with the series.
And Amanda makes a point, because Will and I both agree, and Katie just agreed as well. The setting is really met. It's back burner. The author is not focusing on it. And Amanda just said, yes, but would Murderbot pay attention to the setting? As in, would Murderbot give you any description of it? And to be fair, nah. And that's one of the, when you write something in first person like that, it's something that you are going to lose. For me, I very much, most of the settings were like stations, like airports. It was space airports. The majority of the books, space airports or spaceships, like that's about it. There's a lot of good things here for the people that are going to enjoy it. There are things that I think could have been improved. Like, I think some extrapolated, like moments where Murderbot looked at something and it was off, and he walks you through why something looked off, or like the visual processes, because he's looking at things a lot. You just don't get a lot of explanation. And I think there are ways that could have happened. But again, I fucking loved it. And like Shelby said, that's my point though, because if you don't care about Murderbot, there isn't much else. And it's true. If you don't like Murderbot, if you ain't here for my special baby bot, this ain't for you.
I'm going to try to do something which is ill-advised, and I am going to make a sports analogy. It's like on a football team, if all you have is the quarterback that's good. Like if the quarterback if the quarterback is good, then the team is good, and if the quarterback isn't good, then the team isn't good. I don't know if that's actually how football works, but I'm going to assume that it is. So yeah, I totally agree. If Murderbot works for you as a character, then I think a lot of this book will work for you. Amanda says, I remember in book one, they have a hilarious description where they're like, the humans think this is cool, but it's like rocks and dirt and trees.
Rocks, dirt, and trees.
I understand from a character perspective why you might do that, but it does still make the setting feel gray. It's a bit being like, Murderbot can't see in color, so we can't describe the colors, but like that's a decision the author made, and you lose things in that decision while you gain other things. And I don't really think having Murderbot not describe things gets you that much. But why don't we jump into the plot? Because there are actually 4 novellas to cover, and we've been talking for 20 minutes.
You know what? Before we get started on this, I am going to unfortunately tell you I'm not feeling very well.
No?
Oh no.
So I am going to bow out for this evening. Sorry, guys.
Aw, I hope you feel better.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's just my stomach is just kind of upset.
Oh no.
Apologies, everyone.
Just a real quick, let's get Arcady in this, and then he'll splice it through the video so it feels like you were there the whole time.
I think I have to say the best part of all of this is just the multitasking portrayal that it has. I used to read a lot of Tony Stark fan fiction where he had taken Extremis, except for like made it into the comic book version. And he used to do a whole bunch of it would be all about processing and going through all the things and hacking and, but in the fun way, not the realistic way that I'm sure Will wished it portrayed. And all of that was super fun. And it definitely felt like a comic book because he essentially leveled up in the 3rd to 4th book. He literally gained a skill tree.
Yes.
So he it's not supposed. I like what this was supposed to be. This was supposed to be little novellas, just like the ones that he watches.
You will love the actual novel. It was the best of all of this. It was so good.
Yeah, we'll probably have you guys do a video on it. You too can do Novella 5 and the next book, so we will definitely get Katie's thoughts on it. Hearts in chat for Katie. We'll talk to you later.
Mwah. Goodbye.
I'm alone with Maria. Thunderdome time.
Pistolas.
Pistolas.
Anyway, this book series, so it's there's 5 novellas and then there's a novel. I have read pretty much almost all of it at this point, but for the purpose of this podcast, we were just reading the first 4. I unfortunately will insert stuff from the novel because I loved it so much. The books, it starts with the first one, which is called All Systems Red or All Code Red. I think it's All Systems Red. It starts with our titular character, Murderbot, who is a sec unit. And I'm going to spend some time just talking about terminology a little bit. Sec unit is a security unit, and it always gets referred to as sec unit. He calls sec systems is security systems, and he shortens a lot of things that you don't realize. There was a couple that I didn't realize what they fully stood for at the first time he used them, and then once the whole name got mentioned, I went, oh, okay. Murderbot is a sec unit who has disabled and hacked into his governor module. And what a sec unit is there are these companies that are security bond companies where, let's say you are a group of intrepid explorers that want to go survey a planet for whatever reason. Before you can go survey this new wild planet, you have to get a contract with a bond company that will supply you the vehicles, the materials, the aircraft, and vehicles, that's the other word, to do your survey, but they will also provide you a sec unit, which is a construct, and constructs within this world are made up of cloned human parts and AI/robotic parts. So a midpoint between humanity and robothood. Unfortunately, Will would have preferred it was called something else and not called Murderbot.
Well, when you get saying Murderbot, I immediately thought, oh, okay. And you read the front cover or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay, this is going to be about a serial killer robot. There's that one character in Knights of the Old Republic whose name I cannot remember, who refers to humans as meat bags, and he's constantly talking about how he doesn't like them and he's going to kill them and stuff. And there was also a short story I read back in the day because I was a massive Star Wars Expanded Universe nerd back. Yes, HK47. There was one about, it was a short storybook about all the bounty hunters that are in that one scene in The Empire Strikes Back, and one of them is a killer robot. And I've always absolutely loved that short story because it's it's like he's a robot and he thinks like one. And again, that's just a thing I really like and really want in my robots. And so I kind of went into this thinking it was going to be like that. And then within the first chapter, I was like, oh, okay, this is not that. This is not that at all.
He kind of described it to me as expecting like a funny serial killer robot, but who was funny. Like he expected humor, but like a robot that was just a serial killer.
Or like it was just like constantly like I want to kill them all, but I can't because he's a murder bot.
Which is hysterical, and I think could have been funny, but not. And it's interesting because Shelby also said, I also felt it promised a lot of brutality by the title. Amanda said Murderbot is the name they gave themselves, right? Because of what they did or didn't. Get to that. Like
Ooh.
Bender from Futurama, kill all humans, says Allie.
I agree. I wanted to see them be like, oops, killed a human, my bad fam. Yeah,
My bad,
that was the
fam.
vibe I was expecting. And I kind of want to write that series now just because like it doesn't exist and it sounds fun.
Yeah.
But who is Murderbot if he isn't that, Maria?
You learn early on that Murderbot has hacked his governor module, and what the governor module was the way, because when you have a construct with organic parts, it is not going to completely follow a code because it's got organic parts and it's going to do some thinking. And so to keep it from doing anything outside of what it is supposed to do, they implant this thing in its brain that will fry its neural connections if it does anything. So like if a human says jump and it doesn't jump, you're gonna get fried. If you're too far away from the humans you're supposed to correct, you're supposed to protect, you're gonna get fried. And he disabled his governor module, but he is still serving as a security unit on a bunch of bonds, and he gets away with it because the humans, like, there are times where he doesn't do what the humans said, but he does it in ways where they don't notice. And so he's playing this game of like, how far can he push this? And what you don't realize initially, but comes up later, is that when he destroyed his governor module, the first thing he did was he ingested a fuck ton of media, and he started watching a specific one called Sanctuary Moon. What you do get in the first book is that he watches media all the time. He'll be like talking with the humans or like standing in the room while they do stuff with his armor and his helmet on opaqued, and then he's just watching Sanctuary Moon in the background. Like, he loves his media. He likes disengaging from reality and not actively being a part of it. And he just wants to be left alone. That is it. He doesn't like interacting with humans. He doesn't want to, like, he just wants to do his job and then get to go and watch media in his little transport boxes. That's it.
Initially, I had thought that it wasn't that he liked interacting with humans, like what you said. And it's true that it is that, but it's also like a very deep anxiety when it comes to interacting with people, that you reveal more, I think, as the books go on. At the beginning, it is more of like just kind of like, I don't like doing this. And then towards the fourth novella, he's like, I am actively freaking out right now.
But I think he's actively freaking out because in the first book, he is interacting with humans in a way that he is supposed to, in a way that he has been programmed, or like the protocols have been put in. By the time you get to the fourth book, nothing about it. Mensa hugging him, people asking him about how he feels. He immediately starts feeling anxious in the first book so there's a scene, when the book starts, he's on a bond survey exploration with this group called the Preservation Group. And they are like all chill humans who aren't rude to him, but at the beginning they're not paying too much attention to him or it. In the book, he's referred to as an it. The audiobook narrator was a guy, and unfortunately, I took that on, so I will do my best.
And we've talked before about how in Axiom's End, the robot is described as speaking with a text-to-speech module, and the narrator actually mimics that in a really effective way, and how we would both have liked something similar like that to have been done here, where there is more of like a neutral voice for him.
Androgynous?
Yeah, an androgynous voice, because here it's like, he's just a dude. He sounds a lot like a dude.
The narrator got a dude voice. Like, it's very, and I think if it had been a female narrator, it would have been easy to code it as a female. But anyway, so Murderbot, in the start, nobody's really paying attention, and it has wiped out. So it makes a lot of decisions about what it's going to keep in its brain or not, and it can't fully delete memories or things it's experienced, but it can delete information. And so at the start of the survey, it was provided a packet about who the people it was protecting, And then it deleted it because it wanted more room for media because he loves its media.
Specifically, Sanctuary Moon.
Sanctuary Moon is Murderbot's comfort show, which I love. Like oh god, I relate to Murderbot. I get it.
The thing about his use of media, and we'll talk about it more, but there's a thing where like I felt like some of his motivations and actions can be like, okay, the reason he's acting or thinking like this or has such social anxiety or doesn't really understand people is owed to the fact that most of his ideas about it are coming from media. We talked about sort of like in Abed in Community, who very much processes the world through media. But I don't really think that's a sustainable reading of the text because he like does not mention specific series or events in specific series. Maria said at one point he mentions like a med thing. I think in the second novella, he needs to fill some like blanks conversational space to like hide something or other, and he loops some audio from Sanctuary Moon in there or something like that. But in general, I felt like the book would have been helped if his media was a little more specific and it had affected him a little differently.
I get that. I think using the media as an active filter for the things, and this is done a little bit, but not a ton. So we have some comments going on. Amanda said, I get the sense that they treat constructs very much, and specifically sec units, very much subhuman. Like they view full humanity as superior, and the anxiety is because they want to, the sec units themselves view humanity as superior, and the anxiety is because they want to avoid punishment for acting non-human. And then Zeta says it makes the reference to clients torturing it, which it does mention, like they would make him just jump up and down.
Here's the thing though about Robot. Why would he care if they're making him jump up and down? This is sort of a fundamental thing people don't realize about robots because they think robots are like people, but like what discomfort is there in function for them? He can jump up and down. It doesn't matter. Fundamentally, if he is a robot and he is a computer brain, it doesn't even really matter what his body is doing at any given time.
But again, he's got a fully functioning human brain. It's not just, you're right, if it was just a normal bot or robot, because like Ship, the bot pilot in the third book, when Murderbot is going to Milu with Mickey and that whole thing, Ship is just a happy little doing its thing, no questions, not going for higher learning, not actively trying to change. Like Ship is perfectly happy to do its function.
I get that. But here's the thing, two things. One is that there should be some exploration of that then, in the difference between what his AI mind is like and what his brain is like. And that if his brain doesn't like something, right now there seems to be, you could infer that there is a connection between like a subconscious human brain that then manifests into a robot brain. Again, there's not a great differentiation between what is going on between them. I would have liked to see more exploration of it. Like, okay, I understood in my robot brain that there is no point in being annoyed by this, but some sort of weird feeling welled up in me.
But he refers to all of his feelings as weird feelings that he doesn't expect to have, nor does he want.
Right, but he also doesn't, on the other hand, have the logical understanding of, but it doesn't matter if I'm jumping in circles right now. Amanda says, but isn't that the essential question? What makes someone human? Yes and no. In that I think that's what the book wants to ask, but you can't ask what makes someone human and then talk about a robot, which is a fundamentally different creature than a human, not even because of the artificial brain, but just because of the computing power involved. The abilities involved are fundamentally superhuman.
Magical Girl Shauna asked the question, and this is actually something on a reread I'd like to focus on. Does he actually have a computer brain, though, or does he just have enhancements that gives his brain more capacity? She just asked, is it a computer brain? And then, does he even have a robot brain? And I think it's mentioned that he has storage, he has the ability to do the multitasking, he has analytical processes and data mining processes. So I think there absolutely is a robotic portion of his mind, but I do think there's a fully functioning human brain there, which is why I don't think that question, but also I'm going to turn the light on because it got really dark, guys. Give me 1 second.
But yeah, if anyone does ever want to read a cool robot book, though, that short story one, I think it's called Tales of the Bounty Hunters.
I don't have my headphones in. Don't talk to me.
I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to our very cool patrons because I realized standing in silence was making me look really weird and like Murderbot. Again, there's a scary amount of, like, I understand why Maria likes him because she likes me and there's a lot of similarities there. I had assumed that he did it. Okay, because he does talk about at a certain point that like he can delete storage in his robot brain, but not in his human memories. Like those are impossible to wipe.
But is it just, to this point, is it an actual like AI brain, or is it just like storage that his human brain plugs into? And that's the thing, is I don't have a clear answer for that. I think a reread would be.
I think it's one of these things where, like, I think if you read it the way you and Shauna and a couple of the other people have said, then like, okay, yeah, I understand why you guys think of it as just like he's like a Cylon. But for somebody who wants some specificity, I feel like that needed to be explained. And I will make the argument that putting it in first person is the problem here. If this was a comic book, like Katie said, we don't have to see his thoughts at all. That's fine. Like he can just act and we can assume there's a certain amount of thing going on behind the scenes of in his brain. If it was in third person even, it would be less problematic in terms of it would be less in his mind. But first person, as we talked about, is the most personal, close reading of the character's voice. And so I would have liked to see more of that.
Someone said, I got the impression that it's got an organic brain, but it's also connected to an AI cyber parts that the brain can't function without them, which I think I agree with. That's kind of how I took it.
I think that if they had said that as the explanation, like, okay, it's got a human brain, but it has like the governing module and maybe a couple of other things that it needs to function, I would have been, and it had been called the Security Guard Mall Cop Diaries, I would have been much happier with it.
Shelby says, what is the difference between the murderbots and the augmented humans then? Because murderbots can take off the suit and blend in, right? So technically they can to a certain point. They do have actual like parts where you can see that, like, you know, he has weapon ports in his arms and things that a normal augmented human wouldn't have. The difference is augmented humans are born and then augments are added to them. A bot is cloned human tissue constructed with a lot of mechanical parts. Like his entire lower arm is not an actual, like, it's got some nerves, organic nerves going through it, but there's literally in the novel, there's a point where he detaches his hand from his arm so he can get some cuffs off of it, and he has to work around like actual like detaching each of the individual links inside it, but there is also some organic things that he has to work around. But it is just like he can completely detach his arms. There's a point where he says, like, in the fifth novella, he mentions that technically, because he has trouble getting through weapon scans because his arms are weapons, and he's like, technically I can take my arms off, but I don't want to do that. There is an idea that sec units all look the same. They have the same dimensions and the same basic, like, and it doesn't mention what their face looks like, but that it looks like a human face, and that they do have skin covering themselves. Not all of it is organic. Plot. Continuing. Murderbot is on this thing. There's this group of people. They're all pretty chill. Pretty early on in the first novella, they start like, because the book opens with them doing a survey in this like place, and then there is fauna that like tries to eat someone. There's a character named Bardwaj. She gets attacked by some fauna, and Murderbot has to save her. And someone else, I think it was Ratib, I can't remember, but anyway.
I pictured it as a big sandworm, even though I don't think it actually is.
For some reason, I imagined it as a plant.
That's funny. That kind of makes sense.
I don't know why. Like, it was just like a giant carnivorous plant. I don't know. Again, there's not a lot of description, so what you autofill is what you autofill, my guys. But anyway, when they get back to their ship and their base that they're working off of, there's a character named Dr. Mensa, and Mensa has Murderbot take off its helmet, and everybody's like, oh shit, it looks like a human. It looks like a human. And then there's a point where like people are asking Murderbot, how do you feel? Does this feel like slavery? And Murderbot is like, no, do not ask me questions about my feelings. Don't talk to me. Don't look at me. I don't want to look at you. And the fact that Dr. Mensa asked him to appear without armor drives him up a wall, because there's a protection of just having the opaque mask that when it's removed, he has to control his facial expressions, which is never something he's ever had to do before, because he's never had to show his face to people.
You know what's hilarious? I'm like that in real life. One of the things I actually kind of liked about wearing a mask for the like pandemic is like I don't have to figure out what's going on with my face or what an appropriate facial expression is. There is a relief in not having to figure out and game plan what the other person is thinking. So I did relate to that. But one of the people in our Discord, I think it was Magical Girl Shauna, but I'm not sure, a bunch of you simped for Murderbot, was that he tends to watch humans from the other robot drones in the room. room were like security cameras. And actually, there's like a point in the 5th book where he's like, I didn't have any cameras on her. He's like, oh yeah, I could just open my eyes and look at her.
It's so great.
Because it's distance, and specifically it's distance like he's watching a TV show.
And it's also a way to monitor its own face and the facial expressions it's making and make sure that, like, am I presenting in an appropriate way? Is my face not doing weird things? And someone did make the note in the chat that during the scene when Mensa asked him or it a question that, like, do you want to stay? Face just goes all out of whack, like immediate disgust. And Murderbot runs away. And later they're like, oh man, it has feelings. It showed clear disgust and not wanting to be around us. This thing, and it's Murderbot's inability to control his facial expressions that lets the preservation group know that this thing that they've been told is just a thing actually has feelings and thoughts and preferences.
But okay, so very quickly, I think we should have a section that's just, and I'll put up a lower third that says Will complaining about Murderbot not being a robot section, because I don't think we need to dive back into whether this is a good decision for the novel or not. Like, I feel like we've litigated that pretty well. But this is a case where I thought it would have been like, if he is a robot, then why can't he just keep his face neutral all the time? Like, where is it coming from, this underlying need to facially react? Because different people in different cultures have different, like, freak out faces. Like, there are certain things that are relatively common across cultures.
It learned how to feel through media.
Again, though, if it's learning this stuff from media, then it needs to have a more in-depth reaction to media. And why doesn't it just go, oh, okay, I saw that this was usually this kind of scene happens with a cop, so I looped into that video and I made my body react the same way the cop would in the show. And then that could have been funny because he could have said some stuff that wasn't quite right.
But that's not something it can do, because it does do that. It literally programs itself in book 2 to walk differently, but it's something it has to write code for. It's not something that happens naturally. Again, there is a push and pull, and you're right, it's not explored. There's a push and pull between its organics parts doing things based on its own reactions and its ability to code behavior into itself, because normally it stands without any movement. So you're right, it's not exploring that. I don't give a shit.
Well, again, that's why I want this to be a corner where I say it, but we don't have to relitigate the whole argument about whether the book should be doing it or not.
You're right. It's not explored. It's not. Congratulations. Choo. Anyway, continuing. This is the start of everyone being like, Sec Unit, are you okay? Can we get your input? And Sec Unit is like, I don't want to interact. Don't ask me questions. And to the point where there's a point where Mensa asks Murderbot to go up into the front area where the rest of them are, and they're all talking, where normally people just ping it on its feed and it never has to leave its room. And it is very upset that it has to leave this comfort space. And again, for me, it was the social anxiety of it has no protocol. It has no actual lived experience or code of how to interact with humans outside of what it has been given. I think this is further supported by Sec Unit 3 in the actual novel. Again, is it exploring the ability to make code that can make you react anyway versus, like, how much can it control its organic parts? Like, that's not explored or explained. That's what I think is happening.
And it's worth pointing out that the colonists are from a different, like, culture than the normal corporate kind of space culture that Murderbot hails from and works with. So they tend to be more like bleeding heart liberals.
Yes, they very are.
Yeah, they're more liberal and progressive than the rest of everyone else. So they actually didn't really want a Murderbot around because they consider it like slavery, even though in their culture, like, you still have to have a guardian for a bot. Like, they're free, but they're not quite free type of a thing.
It's interesting. In the 5th novella, there's actually, he gets to meet one of the bots on Preservation Society, and it gets to pick its function. Like, it gets to pick the job it does and, like, what its function is. And it's a very happy little bot doing its thing.
In general, it sounds like there's more exploration of it in the novel. And we'll get to it in the second book, but I did feel like the idea of what a bot is and, like, human and construct or whatever the different things are gets broadened a little bit in the second one. Not as much as I would have liked, but it is explored a little bit more.
The crux of this book's plot is that there are missing pieces of information from what they've been given for this survey. And they realize that when there's that fauna that attacks the group and it wasn't listed anywhere. And then they realize there's whole sections of the map that's missing. And they try and make contact with this other group, the Grey Chris group, on another part of the planet that they're on, and they don't get any feedback. And so there's a discussion about, are we going to go see if they're okay? And there's also an issue with the satellite. They go to an area that wasn't on the map. Something weird happens. They realize that the satellite cut out, and they're like, okay, do we go try help the Grey Chris crew? Or do we just go back to our place? And being the bleeding heart, good people that they are, they're like, we're going to go do a rescue mission. And Murderbot is like, no, my job is to keep you safe. I don't care about these other people. Go be safe. I want to watch media.
You know, something I would have thought was interesting, and I don't know if maybe this is something that happens in later books, but there's an extent to which Murderbot tends to be annoyed with its people when the humans it's protecting, because it really wants to protect its humans. It tends to get annoyed when they go then do stuff that's dangerous. And it would be interesting at some point for him to realize that he's kind of objectifying humans when he does that, in that they don't just exist as cargo for him to protect. They have their own agency and their own wants and needs. And for him to like maybe grow to respect that in the way that, you know, people see him as an object, even though actually nobody really in the book does, but that's another issue we'll get to. I don't know though, that could be something that's explored in later books. Again, these 4 novellas are pretty short.
So they go to rescue Grey Chris. They discover inside that the sec units that were bonded for the Grey Chris group, it might not have been Grey Chris, it might have, the name of that group, I forgot what it was, but anyway, that group that they go to visit, the sec units there went rogue and kind of killed everyone, and one of them is still there and attacks Murderbot. Murderbot ends up killing it, but not before there was 2 that were still alive. One of them put something in his port on the back of his neck, and by the time he gets on the ship with everyone else, he realizes it put a code in it that was going to adjust his code, and he's like, kill me guys, just shoot me, I'm gonna attack you. And they don't, because bleeding heart, good guys. They instead get rid of the malware, I guess, that was going to control him. They figure out that there is a conspiracy about what's happening here, and that there must be alien, there's a term for it, but I can't remember what it is. Deltfall, yes! Allie coming in clutch. Deltfall was the group that they were going to rescue. Like, that they were like, why is the Deltfall group not working? What it was the Grey Chris group was trying to...
Evil.
Grey Chris realized there was alien remnants on this planet. They wanted those remnants to sell it on the black market, and these groups that were there doing stuff, and the Deltfall group was really close to where they were working. So they went in, they killed the Deltfall group, like everyone, took over their sec units to keep them from discovering the alien remnant stuff. They kind of end up putting synthetics, alien synthetics. Yes, Allie coming in clutch.
We should have these all as live streams.
Yes, this is so great. Man, can you guys just be there for all of our recordings?
Yeah, if I have to ever record something without Maria, you guys are going to need to be my... you guys are going to have to be there to remind me of names.
Otherwise, we got nothing.
Basically, if we merge all of you together, you can become a Gestalt Maria.
A stand-in. That works. Anyway, they end up having to, like, face the Grey Chris group. There's this whole thing where Murderbot has to pretend that he is giving up Dr. Mensa. Dr. Mensa, like, it's a whole...
There's a lot of plot in these books, and the action scenes are, like, not bad, but they're long.
I liked it. I found the books didn't feel long to me. They felt very short, bite-sized. It felt like a movie. The buildup of the plot and then the denouement, like everything, and most of the books have a pretty solid 3 or 4 act structure.
Yeah, again, I think for me it's a little bit of the novella structure that I have a problem with. And again, if you really engage with what he's doing, I think that could probably be good. But the big thing, we don't have the combined hand gestures to replicate Maria's Max. That is a fair point. I'll just put up like a dancing seal, and that'll also be, I think, a pretty good. So the other big thing we realize at the end of this book is that the reason he calls himself Murderbot or whatever, the reason he was able to hack his governing module, was that he was responsible for murdering a bunch of miners, he thinks, but the company was too cheap to trash him, so they just deleted his memory. And then after that, he hacked his governing module so he would never do it again.
Well, he's not fully sure if that's why he did
Right.
it, and that's part of what he does. But anyway, at the end of this book, again, everybody gets out alive. He's bonded with this group of people. He gets fairly damaged, trying to defeat Grey Chris, and it works. Like, the plan works. He wakes up and he is at the company, and he only refers to the company that created him as the company. And there's literally a point, because I thought about this a couple times, but there's a point in one of the later books where he's doing therapy with Dr. Bardwaj, and he's asked, why do you refer to the company as the company in all of your personal communications? And like, he literally disconnects from the conversation, and it is great. Anyway, the culmination of the end of this is Dr. Mensa's group, and Dr. Mensa specifically, has bought Murderbot from the company and wants to take him to Preservation Society so he can decide what he wants to do. And he's like, do you need a security unit? And she's like, no, it's pretty safe. We don't really need security.
You can do whatever you want. It'll be great. And he's like, oh no.
And he's like, I don't want to just go and be a pet bot, which is what he thinks will happen. But he also doesn't know what he wants. So before, he can't make an informed decision. So the one thing he does want to figure out, though, is, like Will said, did he actually murder a bunch of miners or not? Like, what was the story that happened on...
So we don't find that out till book 2, though. Book 1 ends with him getting the offer from Mensa, and then he basically just walks off and kind of quietly escapes onto a ship to leave. And then he sends a message, basically the whole first person portion of this novella, he sends to Mensa. And at the end he goes, I'm sorry I left you, Dr. Mensa. Maybe this will help you understand why. I don't really know.
And it says it's signed Murderbot. So Mensa knows that his name for him, or its name for itself, is Murderbot now.
I liked this moment, and conceptually I liked it, but I didn't actually feel like enough work was quite put in. Was quite pistolas. I got pistola ready. I didn't feel like quite enough work. Well, it's not that I didn't feel quite enough work. Again, I don't feel like a robot would be that unsure about its motivations. And so this moment didn't quite hit for me.
Wow, it's amazing. If you have an actual human brain, you don't know why you do stuff.
Which an undeterminate amount of is a robot.
An undeterminate amount.
Again, that's really the issue, is that if this was... I mean, we're just going to go back to the same issue and the same understanding we have about it. But to note, this is a moment where I was like, I did kind of like the way it does leave you with like a little bit of a shiver of like, oh, that's a clever way. I always like when books can recontextualize their narrative some way.
And I liked it because I went in thinking like, oh, what is he going to do on preservation? And then it was just like, nope, I'm out. And it's a little bit, it reminded me a little bit of what Novik does at the end of a lot of her books, where like it looks like it's going to head one way and then she just pivots hard in the other direction at a moment, and it reminded me of one of those moments. But anyway, book 2, novella 2, I do not remember the name at all. Allie, Magical Girl Shauna, if you want to throw it in chat.
It's funny because I like the titles, but I cannot remember any of them. Like, I do like them. There's like fugitive telemetry, artificial condition,
network effect.
Yeah, but like I can't actually remember any of them.
It starts with him. What he's been doing is he's been traveling, and how Murderbot travels, it finds a ship. It talks to the bot pilot, because most ships just have straightforward bot pilots. The only job is to just take the stuff, make sure nothing happens to the stuff or the people, and go to another place. So they are simple, happy little bots.
They don't actually even speak in words. They just send pictures, which I liked. I would have liked more exploration of how the different bots communicated in a non... Like, in a lot of books, it's like, they talked in binary or something like that. Or in the culture books, the warships talk to each other like emails. Like, they have, like, headings for what they're about to say, and then they say the thing. I haven't read those books, but I just know a lot about them because they show up in versus debates a lot.
There is a part in the one I'm reading right now that is exactly, I think, what you would have liked, where you can't understand what the bot is asking Murderbot or saying, and then Murderbot reacts the way the bot is talking, and then it translates for you. It'll be like, query, security, query, purpose, query, and then Murderbot's like, it was asking me these things.
There's a little bit of that in the last book when he's working with one of the bots to fight off some some other people, and I liked that. That was kind of, it felt nicely alien.
Murderbot goes up to people, and it's like, or goes up to the bots on the ships, the pilot bots, and it's like, I am a bot trying to get back to my human, and I need passage. here's a bunch of media for you. You can have some if you let me on. And then the bot's like, okay, fair trade. And then Murderbot just like chills. And the first one is just a cargo transport, so not even like a lot of like human elements to it. And then it gets to a station, has to go to a different ship, and it finds again what it thinks is a cargo transport ship, but it turns out to be a research transport, but with no people on it, and it's just doing a thing. And Murderbot goes, sits down. It comes up a lot where like Murderbot or sec units were never allowed to sit on human furniture, and so it actively takes the time to do that whenever it can, and luxuriates in it a little bit. But anyway, Murderbot's watching some media, and then it gets a feed connection, and it feels this giant presence behind it, and it gets a feed ping that's like, "Are you dangerous? I'll destroy you." And Murderbot's like, "I'm fucked. This ship is really smart. It's really intense. It has so much processing power. Why does it have this much processing power? It can kill me in 47 different ways very easily." And this is our introduction to ART, which stands for Asshole Research Transport. ART actually has a name, but you don't get it until the novel, which is the 6th book. Hysterical. Art's actual name is Perihelion. Art and Murderbot have a precarious relationship in the beginning because Murderbot is terrified that Art is going to kill it, and Art was just trying to ascertain whether Murderbot was a threat to anything, and let Murderbot know, like, if you're going to do anything, I will destroy you. And Murderbot was like, that's not how we make friends, because later Art is like, okay, I'm ready to be friends now. And Murderbot's like, you literally threatened to murder me. That's my job. One of the best things that happens in this is seeing how, because Murderbot gives Art a bunch of media, and then Murderbot starts watching media. It feels Art looking through its feed. And at one point, he changes because he starts watching a new show called World Hoppers, but then he's stressed because of flippin' Art being a giant creep over his like technological shoulder. Murderbot goes back to watching its favorite show, Sanctuary Moon. And Art is like, please go back to World Hoppers. And Murderbot's like, you watch World Hoppers by yourself. And what you learn is that Art needs to like engage with media. It has to do it through somebody else and somebody else's reaction to the media. Art has no basis of understanding what is it supposed to be funny? Is it supposed to be sad, right? Like, what's the reaction?
I actually really loved that. That's felt like such a robot thing where it's like, okay, I just don't understand this, and half the point of media is how it impacts me, so I need a third party to analyze it for me. That I did think was really cool. In general, I felt like Art was a better representation of a robot, but I think that's because we're not in his head as much.
And also he is more of a robot.
But he also like has anxiety, as we'll talk about in a minute.
It's really interesting because they end up watching a lot of they watch almost all of World Hoppers together. Art really likes World Hoppers because it's about a research vessel with a crew going around doing research, which is what Art does. But there's an episode where its crew is in danger and Art cannot watch the next episode. And it's like, it just goes silent. And one of the things that Murderbot mentions is something can only take like a couple seconds in real time, but for like...
I wish more had been done with this, but go ahead.
I know. It's a long time. And so like when Art just goes silent for a while, it's literally Art contemplating existential dread about losing its crew. And there's a part where like the entire crew dies. And Art literally for like 3 hours is just MIA, freaking the fuck out, and won't watch the next episode, and has Murderbot watch it first to make sure it's safe. And then Murderbot tells it that, like, no, everyone's gonna be okay. They come back to life, my guy. And then he watches the next episode, and that becomes his new favorite episode because the ship saves like, it's just the fucking cutest. And, like, I fell in love with Art then, and then in the book, I was also in love. Like,
It's actually cute because there's a part where I think Murderbot is freaking out about something, and Art sends him like the audiobook to whatever moon. What's it
Sanctuary
called?
Moon.
Like as a way of chilling him out without saying anything, and I thought that was clever.
Eventually, Art is like, "Why are you going to this place? What is your purpose?" And Murderbot is honest and is like, I think I might have killed a bunch of people, and I just want to go figure out what happened. And Art is like, why would you think you killed a bunch of people? Is there any proof? And Art comes out everything very logically. And so, like, until there is proof, he does not. And their conversations through these concepts were really interesting, and I really enjoyed that. But the section with Art ends too soon, and we end up on the mining planet where the murdering things happened. And Art, because he's an invested board bub, decides to hang out with Murderbot through his feed and just come along on the adventure. And so there's parts where like Murderbot is interacting with things and Art is providing him information or giving him things to say or like running tests for him while it's happening.
He's like Hacker Man, and you know how in action
man
heroes
in the
always
chair?
have the man in the chair. He's one of those, yeah.
And it's just great because it feels like a little buddy cop.
It's funny because they have a chemistry without actually talking to each other a lot. Like in the silences between them, there's kind of a nice relationship that I did think like kind of worked more as a robot thing. One thing I will say is that the first portion of the book with Art is a lot of fun, but it shows a problem in the third and fourth book where Murderbot is on his own and just thinking about things for like the first half of the story. Because Murderbot doesn't really interact with people, a lot of those stories, the first half of the third and the fourth one, take place in his head, and I felt like that was weaker. Whereas here with Art, there's more of somebody to throw ideas back with a little bit and a little bit more interaction.
And I will agree that's a strength. I find this second novella is my favorite novella. I would say it's the second one, the first one. Oh, yes. Okay, this is something. Shauna reminded me that there is another important thing that happens before we get to the mining planet. It is discovered that Murderbot is missing and that there's a rogue sec unit. And so now people will be looking for a rogue sec unit. And so Murderbot has to actively try and make itself look more human. Part of that is it gives itself fidgets. So normally it is just stock still and doesn't need to move, but it adds a code to make it walk more naturally, fidget a bit when it's standing. And then Art is like, let's just cut off some of your arms and legs and make you shorter, because there are scans and it will have the dimensions of a sec unit and he needs to not get pinged in the scans. So they literally shorten his arms and his legs to make him shorter, but also to make his body proportionate. And they give him, it's hysterical because Art's like, we should give you hair. And he's like, ugh, disgusting. I don't want hair. And he was like, no, you need to. It'll make you look... And it does, and it also helps. And it's just the fine, like, little baby hairs, and then they make his actual hair a little bit longer, and then eventually at a later point, Murderbot makes his eyebrows a little bushier.
Hilarious, too, is that Art is really chill about cutting up Murderbot, and Murderbot is not here for it. He does not trust Art, and Art's just like, I have a surgery unit. Why not? Like, this is what you gotta do this.
You're fine. They end up doing it because they're literally, it's the only way to deal with the scans and do what he needs to without being immediately caught. So they go to the planet, or they go to a different station, but they need to get to the planet, and he needs a way to get in because he can't just get there. And so he ends up finding a group of people. It's like a non-binary person and two women who are researchers who is doing research on the mining colony, but then their research was stolen by this like gangster lady. This part I was very uninvested in. Like,
I so was not paying attention. It's weird because I think this is the best novella of the four, but like this portion of it makes like I just do not care.
I enjoyed the fourth one a lot.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. But this one is thematically stronger, I think, than the third one and even the first one.
Because of Art.
Well, Art, and then also the way it explores with the sex bot. It's a cute cat, guys.
Basket cat.
We're actually going to have to take a second because I have to go open the door for my dog.
Oh, yeah. This is Pumpkin's moment. My girl. Oh, she's staring right at the camera. How you doing, Pumpkin? Oh, Jax is so cute. You guys get to meet Will's Jack.
Nobody judge how messy things are. Look how cute he is. Yeah.
Jax! Oh, you little baby. I love him.
I call him a potato because he looks like a potato. Okay, all right. So, book 2, there's a bunch of stuff with like him and these two people, a girl and a non-binary person.
The most important part of this is the discovery that Murderbot did not actually go rogue on his own and kill a bunch of people. It was a targeted attack virus thing that affected all the sec units on this specific mining job. The comfort units, when all the sec units go crazy on this mining job, they actively start trying to protect the humans because they aren't being affected by whatever this malware is that is making the sec units go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And this is such a fascinating concept because the comfort units, sec unit never, Murderbot never refers to them as if they are also things that think or feel, and you realize it's just because he doesn't actually think about them that much, besides like, ew, what they have to do is gross.
It's honestly really kind of chilling to the way it's described too, where there's such a lack of like, one of them's like, okay, I'm going to try to do this, and the other one's like, all right, I'm going to try to do this, and then one of them went quiet, and then the other one's like, all right, I'm going to try this. Like it's written in such like a non-sentimental manner that it's actually really engaging and powerful.
And it was really like affecting, and it connects to another thing with a comfort unit at the end that is connected to the other group that he's there helping, because he gets the information and he's ready to leave, and then this group has like a complication and there's this whole altercation with the bad lady. But the important thing with that is the bad lady has a comfort unit that it uses not as a comfort unit, but kind of as like a pet bot, similar to a character we're going to meet later, where it uses it a little bit for muscle. It uses it to ping things. The comfort unit comes and finds Murderbot and is speaking to Murderbot, and you get the sense that this is not something it's supposed to be doing, but it's not technically out of its parameters, so its governor module isn't affecting it. But it asks Murderbot, how are you doing this? What did you do? And Murderbot's like, I hacked my governor module. And you get the sense that this comfort bot is just looking for some control in its existence. And it is such a, between learning what the comfort bots did during the massacre and this, it was such a sad, because he does help that comfort bot, but it just leaves, and then that's it. We don't hear about comfort bots again. And Will made the comment that it'll probably be something that comes up again in one of the later, because you can really think of the first 4 novellas as like one book or like overarching arc, because it begins like with Mensa and then ends with Mensa. And I'd agree with that. And so potentially the comfort units would show up again. But I just found art and then the knowledge of the comfort units also being the sentient decision making, like actively trying to like naturally not terrible, or not like you wouldn't expect it of a comfort, because you think sex bot and we like sex toy, like, and it was just like, it made me question how I had originally perceived them.
So I know the book was trying to do that, but to me, they're robots. So why did they actually even want the humans to be alive in the first place? Again, if you're coming at it from the direction of these are robots, then like, why did they care so much?
They're constructs.
But I'm saying if you're thinking of them as robots, that's what you feel like, is it feels a little bit like...
Why are you thinking?
Because it's called the Murderbot Diaries. It's not called Cloned Human Mall Cop. Like, again, the problem, I don't want to get into this argument every single time, but to me, in that moment, I didn't feel that way, because to me, it felt a little bit like, okay, why they're robots? Why not? So Magical Girl Sean said, but that's the point. We're supposed to question our definitions. Yeah, but the thing about it is that only works if you read the bots as a marginalized human group.
They are not bots. Again, you're using the wrong terminology. The book has given you the right terminology. Why do you keep insisting on calling them bots? William, comfort units and sec units are constructs.
Again, we get into this discussion of we don't actually know how much of robot and how much of human they are, mentally speaking.
But we know that they are fundamentally different from bots.
Right, but again, it's not really explained how much they're bots and how much they're people. This is a bit like being like, you know, it's not slavery to use your toaster, but then we have to get into a discussion of if your toaster had partly a human brain, how much of it is slavery and how much of it isn't. And I find allegory and like allegory used like that to be a little bit blunt and unhelpful, because it lacks the specificity to really explore the nuance of an issue. So here, you know, bots are not bots, constructs, as a stand-in, for example, for like a marginalized human group or a labor class or something like that, it doesn't seem to be a problem, because like he murders other sec bots constantly. The only issue seems to be that if you don't have a governing module, then you're a person. Again, this idea of how much of it is slavery if we don't know how much of them is actually...
He also murders humans if they are threatening his human. The thing is, he doesn't do the murder out of cold blood. It is only ever in defense of, and it's sec units and other humans without remorse. And except that if it is an accidental kill or something by proxy, he doesn't like that. He doesn't like killing bystanders. He actively takes measures to not do that.
We only have his viewpoint, so we only have his knowledge of the world, which means that it's hard to, as Shauna said, question our definitions when the definitions aren't actually clear as to what is a person and what isn't here. Again, it's not slavery to use your toaster. It's slavery if your toaster has consciousness and free will.
I think the Preservation Society makes this point. The rest of the world does not view them as people, but the Preservation Society in non-corporate rim does view them as sentient beings, not necessarily humans, but as sentient creatures that deserve some rights. So I disagree. I think as far as the definitions, I think what is not clear is what you initially said: how much is construct, how much is of the constructs are human versus how much is AI. I agree with you. That's not clear. But the definitions it uses, what these different things mean, how constructs fit into society, how bots fit into society, that for me was never something I was muddled or confused about.
That kind of makes sense, but then we're in a position where a whole bunch of sex slaves sacrifice themselves to protect their masters during a lower class uprising. Like, see how that's kind of a weird thing all of a sudden? The book does not actually treat anyone but him and like Art and like a couple of other people as people. And we're not really supposed to necessarily read them as people.
But I think in that moment you are supposed to see them as people, where it's just the mindless death that they are trying to avoid. Because you're right. And again, my issue with this book is it does not explore the comfort units enough and what their motivations are. And they don't come up again later, because you're right. Why are they protecting the people that they have to sleep with? Unless, is there a part of them that enjoys it? But we don't ever get the perspective of a comfort unit to get that. So yes, you're right. The comfort units are not explored. But I don't think that, I think in that moment, we all, even you, had a moment of being like, oh man, they get to make, they are attempting to make decisions within what they are able to do. And that's the point. They're actively making decisions that you would not originally think they would make, but they are making. Was that decision explored enough, and should it be in later books? Absolutely. But you did question, and I questioned my perception of the comfort units during that scene. And I think that's more of what the author was going for than,
No, I'll agree. I think, though, that the book depends a little bit too much on that expectation, like a layer of normalcy over things and a little bit of a vagueness of humanness. And again, I think it's difficult to have discussions about definitions when the definitions themselves are not actually super clear.
So the end result of this is he ends up getting the lady and the non-binary person their research back. He goes back. He's like, next up, what am I doing? And at the end of this book, basically, he realizes that Grey Chris, which is the group that was being heckin' naughty in book 1, has another planet that they did stuff on as a terraforming project that they're trying to offload. He suspects that was also a site for alien synthetics that they were illegally dealing with, because he realizes there's a legal ongoing issue with Dr. Mensa's group and Grey Chris. So he decides, I'm going to go to Milu and I'm going to look for some evidence, and then I'll send it to Dr. Mensa, and then I will be helpful while also doing his own thing. So that's where book 2 ends. Book 3 opens up. He's going to Milu. Him and Art have to fully disconnect at this point. And I was sad. I thought we wouldn't see Art again for a while, so I was glad when we saw Art later. But anyway, he meets Ship. Ship's pretty chill. He gets to Milu. Milu is a very deserted planet. There's like very little happening. Basically, it was a terraforming project. And then Grey Chris stopped doing the terraforming. And now another group, Gravity something? I don't know. But anyway, this other group is coming in to kind of reclaim and potentially see if it's worth redoing the terraforming. So they've sent out a small survey team. He originally just gets to the main station and he's like, okay, I got to get to their terraforming place. And the group that has come to do the survey has, and this is again, each novel has the thing that's actually important wrapped up in all the other plot stuff, and in this it is Mickey and the relationship.
Oh, that's what happens in this book. I was trying to remember, but yes, no, Mickey's a good character.
It is Mickey, the relationship the other humans have with Mickey, and then the relationship Murderbot has with Mickey. And that's each in the last one it was Murderbot's history and the comfort units. In this one, this is the thing, and everything else is wrapped up in it. But Mickey he refers to it as a pet bot. where it doesn't have a specific function, where there's a point where it says the best bots are the ones that have very specific functions. They do the thing, and it's way more efficient to have it like that. And a pet bot is just a bot that can help, like, it's strong enough to help move things. It's got some analytical power. It's got some monitoring power, but it's not specialized enough. It's like a jack of all trades. It's not specialized enough to do anything particularly well. And Mickey is the pet bot of Donna Benna. And Donna Benna is the kind of leader of this survey exploration team. And Donna Benna treats Mickey like a person, not necessarily like a human, but like a friend. Actually, yeah, kind of like a human. They have a very good relationship. And at first, Murderbot is very dismissive of Mickey and Mickey's relationship with its humans, which is really interesting because of how Mickey functions in a kind of similar way that Murderbot in later books will function with Mensa's group, in like kind of almost like a jack of all trades, but specifically security. But anyway, he lies to Mickey and says that he is a security consultant named Rin, and he was sent by their company to help them, but nobody else needs to know he's here, and she can't, or it can't tell any of the people that Murderbot is here. And so it lies to Mickey. Mickey is very trusting and is like, oh, we're friends. I've never had like a bot friend person. And at first, Mickey thinks it's not until later that Mickey realizes that sec unit is a sec unit. But anyway, and the plan immediately goes awry. Murderbot is discovered pretty quickly and has to like justify its existence to the other humans, and it is spotted as a sec unit. And basically the plot of this is the two security people that they thought were sent by their team are actually Grey Chris agents working to make sure that they discover nothing, and if need be, to kill the survey group. And when they are in the terraforming facility, shit goes weird. There's combat bots. There's like weird bots doing things. Murderbot's trying to do his own thing and get his stuff. Their group gets attacked. One of the people gets kidnapped. The security people are like, let's leave that person. We don't need them. And Donna Bennett's like, no, we have to save them. And Murderbot's like, God damn it. Now they're my people. Now I got to help them. And also because it has to maintain that it is a security unit contracted to Consultant Rin. Basically, this book ends with he gets the information that incriminates Grey Chris. Murderbot also gets the logs that the two augmented human security people who were double agents had on Grey Chris. So lots of evidence. But it ends with Mickey dying. And it's actually quite sad because there are multiple moments where you think Mickey is going to react a specific way because of how Murderbot has interpreted Mickey, which is very, very condescending and judgmental. When Will earlier said, like, and very judging, but not to their face, this was a Will moment. Like, the way Murderbot was reacting to Mickey is 100% something I can see Will.
What Murderbot is doing is, like, in the greater argument of the books, he's denying Mickey, like, his agency, and that he thinks of Mickey kind of as, like, an Uncle Tom or kind of a child, or, you know, he's just, he's foolish enough to actually trust his humans. And so when Mickey does this, it makes him realize, like, oh, no, Mickey like really knew what he was doing. He was a real person. He wasn't just a child.
That is so funny. Mickey to me was a coded female. Like I assume, really? Like in my head, Mickey was a girl. Like again, they're both sexless. There is no technically it's. They're all it's. But Mickey was like feminine to me. Patrons. Dumplings. What were our thoughts? How are we? And now I'm just interested in if there were differing opinions.
If we weren't on a Patreon live stream, I would say that's because Mickey isn't that smart, and that's why you read it that way. But we're on a Patreon live stream, and we need to retain patrons, so I won't say it.
Murderbot thinks of Mickey as very infantile, naive, and when Murderbot sees we care...
Sorry.
Patrons canceled. Damn it, there goes another one. Ooh, but I also read Mickey as a male because he was infantile, as Marie said.
Touche, Shauna.
I love this. Oh, I love it. Anyway, this is so much. I like the live stream so much, guys, especially when we're getting a lot of feedback. It's so great. It's so... Mwah.
Yeah, it really is. It's a lot of fun.
Donna Benna and Mickey's other humans show it a lot of genuine love, affection, care, and ask it for advice in a way that the humans who generally knew Murderbot was a sec unit never did. So there's a point where Donna Bennett says something nice or lets Mickey sit next to her, and Murderbot has never been invited to sit anywhere with humans before, really. And it's like, I was having an emotion, and the emotion is kind of like jealousy.
There's also a certain amount of distrust and like,
yes,
it's interesting though, because Murderbot is basically treated great by everyone he on-screen interacts with. So sometimes it feels a little bit like we never really see him mistreated by humans. So sometimes it doesn't quite ring as true or as powerful, I think, as it would if like people were genuinely shitty to him when he was a Murderbot.
I agree with that. I'm okay with it. I can imagine all the ways humans would be really shitty to sec units. So like I add that to it, but you're right. It's not, we're never shown someone being actively terrible to Murderbot. And it's because we start with Mensa's group, like, and then the second group thinks he is an augmented human. And then this group, he's literally with Donna Benna and their group. And then there are points where Mickey does things that Murderbot does not expect Mickey to do that show it is informed, it is making active decisions, and it is smarter and less naive than Murderbot originally took it for. You get all of that, and at the end, there's a point where what Murderbot realizes is that Mickey doesn't actually have any controlling governor module or anything that allows it, that makes it so it has to listen, which Murderbot didn't realize before. Because there's this point where Donna Benna says at the end, there's like, Mickey needs to get into this hatch. Murderbot is holding off some people. Mickey wants to make sure its humans are saved. And Donna Bennett's like, get in the thing, Mickey, just get in the thing. And Mickey's like, no, I'm gonna help, like I'm gonna do the thing. And Donna Bennett said, I'm ordering you to do it. And Mickey goes, I changed my order denied. I've changed my ability to, like, Mickey's able to make that decision and disregard it, and then launches itself at the combat unit that was going after after Murderbot, which allows Murderbot to save the rest of its humans and escape. And this is one of those ways where I do agree with Will a little bit that not being in Mickey's mind gives this moment a little bit more, because our interactions with Mickey are very, because the way it speaks feels like
it's childish.
It's childish, but also very simplistic, like it is working through a sort of protocol. So all you get is what Murderbot gets. So you initially as well think it's, it's a little bit simplistic. Its functions are simple. The way it thinks is simple. And in that moment where Mickey makes this decision, chooses to disregard, and previously, if it was given a direct order, it did it. And by not being in Mickey's brain while that's happening, it makes the decision more impactful and sad. And I was genuinely like, oh, I did not think the author was going to kill Mickey. Like, I just didn't think that was going to happen. And then Wells just fucking did me dirty and killed Mickey. Yeah, it was really good, and that's the most important part.
I was gonna say, otherwise that novella, like, I could not remember what happened in it. The book's project, or the series' project, is trying to broaden how Sec Unit or Murderbot like sees the world and how he sees other bots and constructs and stuff like that. And so, in the second book we had Art and the Sex Bot, who I thought were like really interesting ways of going about it. And then this Mickey was like another expansion of that. I think part of the problem with the third book is by this point, the human characters are feeling increasingly generic and samey. And everybody's just like very chipper and nice. And so there's an extent to which it feels very much like, okay.
It's the opposite issue of Savior's Champion, where all the men suck.
Yeah.
You're right. There isn't a lot of like shitty, like, and then there's the Grey Chris humans, but they're faceless. They're not actual characters that you develop or interact with. There's no actively, in the fourth one that we're about to go into, there is a character.
The one he's supposed to not get along with, but actually gets along with pretty fine.
Yeah.
Chat, help out. Maria's turning into me.
There's this one character in Mensa's group and it's an augmented human who doesn't trust in the first book, Murderbot the most, and is like the least interested. Oh, Shauna goes, give me a sec, the wiki is slow.
We see you, Shauna, and we appreciate it.
Garothan, yes. Garothin. Oh, that was the point, that there's not a lot of characters who are dislike or distrustworthy or who are bad. And the closest you get is Garothin, but very quickly Sec Unit and the reason we keep saying Sec Unit is because Mensa's group calls Murderbot Sec Unit because its name is incredibly private. Like, if Murderbot was real, it would hate that I was referring to it as Murderbot. It would prefer to be referred to as Sec Unit. And Garothin's like the closest you get, but there's really no antagonistic characters, and it's just the corporate rim as a whole is the antagonistic character. And I do agree that could have been fleshed out a little bit.
It's a tone thing in that, like, this book is not going for a serious tone, and so... No. Right, yes, no, it is going for your candy tone. Nom, nom, nom.
I love it. Give me more. I literally overread for this, guys. I'm over-prepared. I nearly read everything that was available, except I didn't get as much chores done today, and I was more active in talking to people, so I didn't read as many books.
If you want Maria and Katie to do it as a live stream when they do the sequels, let us know in the comments below. Engagement.
With book 4, Murderbot discovers that Dr. Mensa is missing. It has the information. It sends it to Preservation Society, to Dr. Mensa's home, but it realizes Dr. Mensa is missing. Preservation Society doesn't have her. She's not anywhere. There was the station, the company station from the beginning where they were on, and since then, nobody knows where Dr. Mensa is. And there is a vague idea that Grey Chris has put out that Dr. Mensa is on Transroll in Haifa for negotiations about things. And Murderbot's like, oh, I'm pretty sure she's being held captive. So Murderbot has to get to Transroll in Haifa. It hooks back up with Roti Garothin. Is it Pinley? Yeah, Pinley's the one that's there. Then there's Oversay. And then there's the one that starts with A, who is Oversay's wife / lover. They call each other babe. I love those two. But anyway, so it's Pinley, Roti, and Garothin. And he hooks up first with Pinley because he doesn't like Garothin and Roti's with him. And so he goes to Pinley and, like, she's angry. And then Arata, yes, there, thank you. Oh, man, coming in clutch. So number 1, I forgot to mention this. At the end of the 3rd book, you realize, or Murderbot realizes, its processing ability has increased. All the stuff it had to do at once during the 3rd, because there's a point where it is literally doing like 4 or 5 things at one time, and it has to push itself to do more than it usually had to, because it doesn't have sex systems, which is the security systems that would have cameras everywhere, bots everywhere, and resources for it to tap into. So it is having to do a lot more of that stuff within itself.
I think it's also, there's a certain amount of computational power in sex systems that it can access, if I'm remembering correctly.
Exactly. But it doesn't have that on its own. So it has had to, like, during the climax of Novella 3, it had to do a lot of stuff. And it literally opened up synapses and, like, neural pathways in its brain that gave it extra processing power. So as Katie said earlier, it leveled up.
So basically, the important part is that he's there to save Mensa, who has been kidnapped. And basically, the interesting part about the book is that he actually interacts with Mensa at several points in the last third. Like, they're together. And I did think that was kind of interesting, the discussions they have. So, like, she asks him, like, oh, what do you actually like about Sanctuary Moon?
Why is it your favorite media?
Yeah, and he's like, I was just the first one. It, like, helped me figure things out after the Murderbot incident. And I thought that was interesting. It was like a nice change of pace, because again, in the first half of the story, he's mostly just going through what sound like warehouses thinking about things. So it's like nice to see him actually interact and be kind of challenged by another character who does know about his emotional life, because a lot of the characters in 2 and 3 just didn't, besides Art in the first half.
You're right. This book is often at its best when it's too... So, like, one of my favorite parts in the book is his conversations with Mensa's daughter, Amina, who asks him a bunch of questions, but is also a teenager. Fantastic dynamic. This book really shines when you have those one-on-one conversations, or those active conversations that are not just dealing with plot, but are dealing actively with Murderbot and the way it is processing and thinking. Like, one of my favorite conversations in the second one is when Art is challenging Murderbot to think about, like, did you murder people? Is there actually any proof? And this is, again, and it's a great sequence because they're walking and they need to talk so that they look normal, but they're actively walking through like a hostile environment trying to dodge things, but having these like feelingy conversations. The other thing you get about Sanctuary Moon is it was the first time he really felt something. And a thing that you're going to realize at the end of this book is it is also a way that his brain can process. It's really interesting. We'll get there. But anyway, the basic gist of it is they end up rescuing Mensa, but he gets really damaged. So they get off the station and they're in a ship because Mensa's group is still being bonded by the company, and it's a company ship, but Grey Chris is using this other security company that starts with a P, and their ship attacks the company's gunship. This was the book where I really noticed that the company should have a name, and he's actively just calling it the company.
For a while, I thought Gilchrist and the company were the same thing in certain books because I had just kind of assumed that they were. But yeah, you're right. He doesn't call it the company. Like, he calls it the company and not a specific.
Yeah, and you notice it when he talks about the other security company by name, but then the company is just the company. Basically, the other security group attacks the company's gunship and sends a killware that is a sentient, basically. It can make decisions. It's not just code. While Murderbot is doing a bunch of stuff on the ship to kind of help stabilize things, it has to enter the bot ship pilot's
I did actually like this action scene a little bit more because it was fun seeing Murderbot interact with the ship as like a sidekick, and also it was like not just the same physical action, like they were actually having to counter hack it.
And there's literally a point where like he's not visually seeing things because he's now in, like, he does what Art did with him a couple times, where Art put himself in Murderbot's body to do things, and so he puts himself in the bot pilot's consciousness in the ship. He now feels himself as ship, which was very great. But he's actively fighting the killware that has been put in the ship, and as the killware is able to like make weird decisions that the actual bot pilot would never have been able to counteract, he is able to do so. But by doing this, he overstretches himself because he is able to do multiple things at one time pretty regularly throughout the books. But it is at this point that he overextends himself too much, and it does a forced shutdown. And with this forced shutdown, it kind of erases his, like, it's such a bad forced shutdown that when he comes to, he doesn't remember a lot of things, and his brain is slowly between the memory drives and his human brain putting back together what has happened. And it's a really great scene because he's interacting with the humans, but he doesn't know who they are or where they are. And you're right, Magical Girl Shauna, the company would work way better visually if you're just reading it than through an audiobook, because there are times where it can be a little confusing. And he's putting himself back together, and there's a point where he remembers that he likes media, and he remembers Sanctuary Moon. So he starts playing while he's still doing all this processing to put himself back together. He starts playing Sanctuary Moon, and it excites his organic synapses so much, the whole process goes faster. And for me, it was just, again, one of those things where Sanctuary Moon was a foundational moment of him going from just not knowing how to interact with things, not fully understanding things, but a moment of feeling that came in. And again, if he referred to it more, if he brought it up more, if he used it as a reference for how he saw it, yeah. But this moment was enough to give me the importance of, it's like when you play music for people with dementia and memory issues, and they are able, through the music that they loved when they were younger, to get back to that memory point. And Sanctuary Moon functions that same way. It has as much emotional impact as that. And so if you think about it that way, then it makes sense. And he's able to put his memory back together, and it's funny because he's real dickish during this process, and I enjoyed it. But basically at the end, Pinley's like, I will help you put together a contract. We'll go to what's-its-face Preservation Society, and you'll be with us now, Sec Unit. And he's bonded with Mensa. He's like, okay, I'll do this thing. And I don't know if it's in this or at the next thing, but the company that Donna Benna, Mickey's owner, worked for has asked him to be a security unit for one of, and they call him Security Consultant Rin. So Donna Benna knows he's a sec unit, but it's we would like to hire Security Consultant Rin for one of our surveys. And it's so cute, and I love it.
So that's the series. Maria really loved it. I don't think it's fatally flawed. I just think it's a very strong case of not the fundamentals not being for me, and so every move the author made didn't quite work. But I know a lot of you guys in our Discord really liked it.
And I will say, because like Amanda was like warm on it, like she didn't love it, but didn't dislike it. And so I think what was really nice with this, because in the Discord chat about this book, it was pretty overwhelmingly positive, and I definitely was one of those. And so I liked that there was a little bit more like dissent.
A little more discussion. In general, I've mentioned this to Maria before, but like when we pick books for the book club, we try to do it really early in the month so people have time to read it. But everyone reads it within like 3 days of us picking it, and I don't read it till the week beforehand. So sometimes I'm a little sad that I can't, engage with you guys more while everybody's reading it at the same time. But it would be difficult from a scheduling perspective. But it is really nice just seeing everybody's opinions and hearing them talk it through and stuff like that. And I think also it gives a good basis for the video to start with. Like we know where people are at and what things to talk about. Not that you or I really have problems coming up with ways to talk for hours and hours, but
the Discord chat has been a really good place. Like we referenced it a lot in our Mask of Mirrors video. So like if you're like, hey, I want to be part of that life and that world, maybe join our Patreon and get to partake, become a book club member.
You're right. We do have a Patreon.
We do. That's why I've been referring to all of these people as patrons.
I thought that was their name.
No, they're not all patrons.
Shelby says that was so smooth.
Yeah, you like it?
We're professionals. Well, I had an ad read earlier. You missed it, but it was for mashed potatoes. Shauna was saying that she would love to see you and Katie do it on stream or in a video. I think that would actually be really interesting, and I would be curious to see what that's like. It's always kind of fun to edit just you guys, even though that's only happened like once.
I would love to talk about the novel and the 5th novella. So I'm totally here for it. I need to actually start reading all the books that I said I would read. Like there's a bunch of sequels that I said I would read and I haven't done it yet. So I got to do that.
Thanks everybody for joining us.
This has been a long one.
We had a lot of pet incidents and Katie couldn't make it for the whole thing, but we will see you guys next time.
Bye.